Welcome to the series. Liam tiptoed up the attic stairs. Sunlight slanted through cracks in the boarded-up windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the stale air. At the far end of the room, nestled in the gloom between an old trunk and a dusty rocking horse, sat a clock. Its hands were frozen just past the hour of 3. But what caught Liam's attention was the thin tendrils of silver smoke curling from beneath its ornate wooden casing. Smoke that looked like the softest wisps of hair, yet somehow also like the reverse side of a waterfall. Confused, Liam walked toward it. He ran his fingers over the glass case, tracing the patterns of the carvings. Ivy, leaves and flowers, intertwined with vines that climbed and climbed until they disappeared into the brass gears and pendulums that powered the clock. Somehow he knew that if he opened the case, if he touched those gears, he would be touching time itself. So instead, he pressed his ear against the cool glass, listening for the source of that sound. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then he heard it. A faint tick. No, not a tick. A talk. The clock was ticking backwards, and as he stood there watching, mesmerized by its slow, deliberate rewind, something incredible happened. The sunlight slanted through the cracks in the window, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the stale air. And then it didn't. The room went dark. A thick layer of dust fell over everything. The attic was silent. Liam could hear his own breathing. When he could stand it no longer, he ran downstairs, flinging open the front door and racing out into the blinding light of day. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes and listened. Birdsong filled his ears, the hum of insects, the murmur of traffic in the distance. All sounds moved forward, all but one. He could still hear the steady talk of the clock, even from outside the house. It was then that Liam noticed that the world around him had changed slightly. A butterfly that had been fluttering away from him now fluttered closer. A car that had been approaching slowly began to move faster, gaining on him. A woman who had been walking toward him turned and walked away. Everything was moving backwards. Everything except for Liam. He was stuck in a world that was rapidly unwinding. His heart pounding in his chest, he broke into a run, desperate to escape the encroaching chaos. But no matter how fast he went, it was as if the world was being pulled backwards at a faster rate. The butterfly passed right through him. The car shot past, narrowly missing him, its horn tooting frantically as it reversed direction. The woman walked right through him as if he were made of air. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The woman froze in mid. The car hung suspended in the air like a metallic butterfly. The butterfly settled on his shoulder, its wings beating softly. Time seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Then the talk echoed once more and everything resumed its backwards motion. The woman continued her stroll down the street. The car trundled on its way, and the butterfly fluttered off into the distance. The world was as right as it was wrong. The sun shone brightly in a cloudless sky. The birds sang sweetly in the trees. Children laughed as they played hopscotch on the sidewalk. Their games, their voices, their very existence seemed to unravel before his eyes. As he stood there watching, unable to move, unable to speak, time kept ticking away in reverse. Then, as quickly as it began, it ended. The world snapped back into place. The children solidified. The birds stilled. The sun dimmed behind gathering clouds. Liam blinked, confused. What had happened? What was happening? Why was the world moving backwards? Then he remembered the clock. He turned and raced back toward the house, his heart pounding in his chest. Bursting through the front door, he sprinted up the stairs and flung himself against the attic door. It creaked open and he stumbled inside. The rocking horse stood motionless, its glassy eyes staring sightlessly ahead. The trunk sat inert in the corner, its iron bands cold and unyielding. And the clock stood silent, its hands frozen just past the hour of 3. But when Liam pressed his ear to the cool glass case, he could hear it again. The soft, deliberate talk of the clock as it wound time the wrong way. And then, just as suddenly it stopped. Silence descended, thick and heavy, broken only by the sound of Liam's own ragged breathing. Had it been a dream? Had the clock stopped? Was the world going to go forwards again? Was it always going to be this confusing jumble of a never-ending present? But then, ever so faintly, he heard it again. The soft, deliberate talk of the clock as it wound time the wrong way. Liam stared at the clock, mesmerized by the dancing smoke, the smoke that looked like the softest wisps of hair, yet somehow also like the reverse side of a waterfall. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and touched it, and then he understood. This was no ordinary clock. This was a clock of infinite possibilities. With each talk, it wove a new path through time, unwinding moments, hours, days, years, giving Liam the chance to start over, to do better, to say the right thing, to be someone new. And as he stood there realizing the scope of what he had found, a smile spread across his face. He could undo anything, a mistake, a lie, even a goodbye. For the next few days, Liam reveled in his newfound power. He became a conductor of time, orchestrating the world to play out exactly as he wished. With the turn of the clock hands, he could fix a broken toy, make a spilled drink jump back into its glass, heal a torn photo on its own. One afternoon, he even brought an end to Mrs. Gable's endless barking from her home across the street. Time rippled and flowed around him as he adjusted the hands of the clock, creating new outcomes, reliving old moments. Each talk gave him the chance to do it all over again, to try something new, to explore the endless paths that lay before him. Yet as the days turned into weeks, a shadow began to fall over Liam's joy. He found himself growing bored with the predictability of his perfect world. The repaired toy never broke again. The drink stayed in its glass. The photos remained whole. The clock's steady tick-tock became a monotonous drone. He wanted something more, something different. So one night, under a sky full of stars, he turned the clock's hands so that the hands pointed not to tomorrow, but to yesterday. The world shimmered and shifted, falling out of sync. People walked backwards. Cars drove the wrong way down one-way streets. Cats chased after mice that had not yet been born. At first it was exhilarating, this rewinding of time. To see the familiar streets and houses and faces in reverse was like looking through a kaleidoscope. But as the hours passed, the thrill began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Liam realized that every action had a consequence, every choice a ripple effect. When he rewound time, those ripples changed, creating new outcomes, altering lives, affecting people he did not understand, did not know. He had undone Mrs. Gable's barking. Yes, but in doing so, he had also removed the one thing that had brought her solace in her old age. He had ended her loneliness. As he stood there realizing the unintended consequences of his actions, a wave of dizziness washed over him. The room spun around him. His vision blurred. The clock stood silent, its hands frozen in mid-turn. The world shimmered and solidified. The dizzy spell passed. And when Liam opened his eyes, he saw that he was no longer in his room. He was in the backyard. In front of him stood the old gnarled oak tree under which he and his grandfather used to sit. Beside it, half hidden in the long grass, was a small, intricately carved wooden box. With shaking hands, Liam approached the tree. He knelt beside the box and opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a single golden key. On the velvet, etched into its folds, were the words, "To the Keeper of Time." As Liam slipped the key into the lock of the old clock, its hands began to turn, winding themselves back into the present. With each tick, the world righted itself. Cars drove the right way down one-way streets. Cats chased after mice that had already been born. People walked forward, talking, laughing, crying, living. The clock chimed, marking the passage of time, the turning of the wheel, the cycle of life and death, birth and rebirth. The world spun around him, rushing, tumbling, swirling, finally coming to rest. The sun shone brightly in the cloudless sky. The birds sang sweetly in the trees. Children laughed as they played hopscotch on the sidewalk. Their games, their voices, their very existence seemed to unfold before his eyes. As he stood there watching, the attic door creaked open and a young boy appeared, his eyes shining with wonder and excitement. "Grandpa," he called, his voice echoing with the joy of discovery. "Come see what I found." And as Liam watched, a smile spreading across his face, he realized that the clock was still ticking, still waiting for the next person to turn time the wrong way.